When my mum passed, she was obsessed with Braveheart as a film, and she loved that piece of music. And whether you believe it or not, one of my mum's best friends went to see a medium, and she said, if you ever hear Braveheart playing on music, that's her. That's how she's letting you know she's there. And just at that point where I'm losing my mind, I'm like, it's not coming out, Braveheart started playing, and I kind of laughed, but also I was like, that's my mum. Like, she's here.
I had my children on the floor. I was on my favourite blanket that my grandmother gave me on the floor like a cat.
And I realised in that moment the potential of what our bodies can really do as women.
Like, I could feel his head. I could do my own internal, like, yeah, his head, I could feel it.
I was in tears. I was just in tears and overwhelmed with gratitude.
Hi and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast, the podcast that is bringing embodied birth wisdom from women from all over the world sharing their natural birth stories. Don't forget to subscribe and download so that you can always have access to these empowering and positive natural birth stories. Hi, Cassie, and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm excited to tell my story, Anna. Thank you.
So exciting to have you here. So, do you want to take us back to becoming pregnant the first time and your thoughts about birth and what kind of birth you wanted?
Yeah, so my first pregnancy with my daughter Bonnie. We actually fell pregnant really quickly. I think I was struggling with infertility at the time. I had a thyroid condition that I was like working on healing with a nutritional therapist and a homeopath at the time. And I wasn't ovulating, hadn't had a cycle in probably 10 years. Like, it was really bad. So that was a whole part of my story that was a thing. And I was working really deep in integrative psychotherapy. So understanding, I had a really traumatic early years of life. So working through that. And I got to like a really good place. I met my now husband, and we've been together maybe about 7 or 8 months, maybe less. Yeah, about 7 or 8 months. And I think it must have been the first time I ever ovulated because we'd done the deed. And then, the next day I was like, oh, because I was temperature tracking to see just because I wanted to know about my health and if I was going to ovulate. So I kept doing it. I was like celebrating the month that I have a period, And then I ovulated the next day and I was like, oh dear. And thought, what are the chances? And then we were away in Cornwall in the UK for like, I don't know, that a couple of weeks later, and I'm like, something feels really different. Like, my boobs were hurting, my nipples had changed, and I was like, something's off. And it was actually my husband that said to me, do you think you might be pregnant? I was like, oh, it wasn't like a hell no, but it was like, this would be, we don't live together. We were kind of in this bit between one lockdown and another where the world was really weird. And anyway, we went to like Morrison's, which is a supermarket in the UK, and I got a pregnancy test. I actually found out I was pregnant in the toilet of Morrison's in Bude, Cornwall. So that was not like a very, exotic, or it's quite funny in hindsight because we were just sitting there in this really rainy day in this cafe, just like, what on earth is going on? But really from the beginning of that pregnancy, I think I had decided that like something was wrong with me, in that like I was really focused on my thyroid being off, and it was almost like I really wanted loads of medical attention at the same time as wanting this completely natural experience, even though I wasn't on medication. I'm not someone that goes to hospitals, or like that's just not even how I was then. But I just really was scared of like losing my baby because of my thyroid. So that was weird. So from the off, I really like egged it up. I did the whole, in the UK, you have kind of like midwifery care. And I wasn't actually classed as high risk until a certain point where my baby was measuring small. And at that point, they started to really push like scans. And at that point, I knew enough to know, okay, well, they're not accurate. And actually, I'm just going to have small babies. Like, I'm quite a small person. There was no evidence of anything else being an issue, but they were obsessed. So I was back every 2 weeks for scans from about, I don't know, 32 weeks. And they were like, no, you will have to have a hospital birth. And I really, really, really didn't want that. And then they would start kind of talking about induction. Maybe that was like 36 weeks. And I was really pushing and holding off, saying like, because they wanted to induce me at 37 weeks, which is, I mean, if they were small, like that makes no sense for a small baby anyway.
Oh,
The
yeah.
whole
So,
thing,
yeah, the thing with small babies, right? And big babies for that reason, but small babies are fine. Small babies are fine. If that's the only thing that it's measuring small, that's fine. Some
yeah.
babies are small. Like it's okay. You don't have to induce for that. And you're right. Like it's a small baby, you would want to let that baby grow and get fat, and
Yeah.
each day, each week's going to be great for that baby, as long as the placental flow is good.
And it was good.
And as long as there's no other signs that something is failing within that body, or like the measurements of the body's like really wacky and weird. If it's just a small baby, it's a small baby.
Yeah. Yeah. And this was my thing. Like at this point, I was getting really fed up, but home birth wasn't really an option at that point. I was living with my in-laws, so that was fun. It was great actually, and it just every appointment the consultant would say, right, baby's still small, but they're growing like at the same rate. But it was like, but if that rate drops off, and then I'm just thinking, and I would say, well, that scans are inaccurate. And I'm small, I'm well, everything's fine. She's like, yeah, you're small, everything's fine. It's probably just a small baby. However, we need to induce it 37 weeks. And I'd be like, you're saying one thing, but you're just like, computer says no. And I was terrified of birthing in a hospital at that point, because the only other time I'd been in a hospital was when my mum died when I was 16, and it was so traumatic. So I'd walk in the hospital and I would smell hand sanitizer, that smell, that hospital smell. And already my nervous system was like, I knew it wasn't the place for me. And that's not to say, it's not the place in an emergency. Of course I would have gone, but like this wasn't an emergency. Everything was fine. But I just felt so much pressure. I would leave every appointment feeling like crap. So then I convinced her to allow me, I'm doing that with quotations, right, to go to 40 weeks. But after 40 weeks, you have to come for induction. So I'm just like fear-mongering to get the baby out, the whole thing. So I'm doing all the things at home, like eating jalapenos. What the hell? Just all these stupid things. I didn't do like castor oil or anything like that because no. And, I was doing a lot of birth prep. I was doing loads of yoga. I was using something called like the Annie ball, which is like this balloon you blow up, and doing all that prep, and actually like did bother in my second pregnancy. But I think all of those things were like material ways of helping me feel some remnants of control, when the reality was I didn't want to listen to birth stories. I didn't want to know anything about birth. I literally didn't. Everyone would tell me about their births, and I'd be like, okay, like I had this full spectrum of kind of stories, but they're all very medical. I didn't even want to watch a birth video really, because it was like something about thinking about seeing that was like, no, I don't want to see it. It was so weird. So I still don't really know what that was. Maybe a bit of ego, I don't know. But I do like hypnobirthing course and stuff. But that was like still surface level, because the truth was I really couldn't navigate the system, and I still had that good girl mentality where I was like trying to be polite, but really struggled to just be like, no, piss off, like I don't want that. Even though I'd sit there with evidence, I got like at the time my psychotherapist to write a letter to be like, do not allow her to birth in a hospital, please just give a midwifery unit. She read it. Consultant was like, oh, this is nice, but also no, like you have to birth in the hospital. And where I was at, I was just kind of like feeling like I had no choice. when the reality was I could have just walked out of there and just been like, piss off. But that was where I was. And so I got to like, I think 40 weeks and 3 days or something. And I was booked in for an induction on the Friday. At this point, the pressure had gone on and on. I had all these sweeps, and I was just done. Like, I was done with being ground down constantly. And I just kind of had come to the point where I was like, I don't know what the expression is, but it's like I just was like, just whatever, like I can't win here. Like, you're just gonna make this hell the whole time. So I just have to go for this induction. And so the Thursday night, I'd found a midwife nearby who does acupuncture. And I'd just been like, just please get my labor going. And she was like, listen, if baby's ready, this will start things. If baby's not ready, it's not going to work. Of course. I'm like, don't care. Stick the needles in. Let's go. But it was really a very nice like experience anyway. And I remember that was this point where I felt really cared for. Like, it was another midwife. It was lockdown, but we had just come out of lockdown on like the Tuesday, as in some restrictions were lifted. But like my husband still wouldn't have been able to come to the birth unless I was like in active labor. A lot of things still going on that were just ridiculous. But anyway, but that was the first time I felt like this feeling of like holistic care about my whole pregnancy, because I'd spent my whole pregnancy in lockdown. It was awful, to be honest. So it was nice, and it was spring and it started to feel, different. And then sure, like about 2 a.m. I woke up that night and I was having like these cute little period cramps, and I thought, oh, like this actually might be it. I don't know. And then that morning we knew we were going in for induction at like midday at hospital, because I just resigned to that fact. We went for a walk around the woods nearby, and at that point it was really nice because it was just kind of ebbing and flowing with the waves, and would have to stop and like grab onto a tree. And it was probably, when I timed it, was like 3 every 10 minutes. So it was really regular, but it wasn't like rip roaring. It was I had to stop, but I could continue. I was like walking around. So it was nice. And we bought some strawberries. And then it was like this, it was just like really nice. And then it was like, right, we need to get in the car now and drive to the hospital. And it was just this whole change. So we get in the car and I'm driving to hospital, and I'm definitely in early labor, but I'm starting to get really like depressed, honestly. And I'm like crying in the car, just like, I don't want to go, just like really every part of my body. If my body could have done something, it would have like pulled back. It was also, I feel like my ethereal body was like right at the back of the car, just like, no. It was just not wanting to go. And I'm like dragging myself through this hospital. And I thought, well, what will happen is when I get there, they'll see that I'm in labor, and then they'll send me home. But this is not how it works. I got there before anyone sees me. I'm like checked in. I've got my tag, and I'm imprisoned at this point. And yeah, I had it because at that point I just thought you had to have vaginal examinations all the time, even though I was kind of like, oh, you could decline those, but apparently like you can't here, because they just come in and say, right, I'm just going to examine you now. So I got in this hospital room. There's one other person in there, and she examined me, and she said, oh, you're 2 centimeters. And I was thinking, oh, like great, they're going to send me home. And she's like, right, so let's get started with, I think it was a gel. It wasn't a pessary. It was definitely a gel they put on. And at that point, like my contractions before that point were very regular, and they felt very rhythmic and very normal. And I always felt that my firstborn Bonnie was wild. Her energy was wild and unhinged, and she really is. And her birth was exactly like that. So they put this gel on, and I go from this sort of nice, calm. And this is about like, I don't know, by the time they actually put the gel on, it was about 5 p.m. Like it took 5 hours for anyone to get round or do anything, which was fine because when I got there, my contractions had stopped. My body had just gone, nope. So everything had stopped. And I had to get my essential oils, I had to get my blindfold on, and I had to just get the oxytocin going and tell my body actively it was safe, because my nervous system was like, you're not safe here. And birth had just shut down, which, you know, I knew what was happening at that point. So I'd gone back to the breath, just got my music on, got my essential oils, and was just in the zone. And then I managed to get it back going. So I kind of said, right, if you're here, you just need to make the best of it now, because you've decided this and that's that. So anyway, it's about 5 o'clock, I think, that came around and put this gel on. And really within 10 minutes of that gel being on, things went from feeling how I would describe like natural to very unnatural. And most people would maybe say this about like Pitocin or something, but I knew, and I know my body now, it's very sensitive, and I knew the minute they put gel on, shit was going to go wild, and it did. And it just made everything feel very erratic and irregular and strange and all over the place. Like there was no rhythm. I couldn't kind of get into, you know, like with surges, they tend to kind of go up and down, or like up and down, and mine always go up again and down. I seem to have these like double enders, was like fine. This wasn't, it was like up, down, up, down, up, down. It was just crazy. And then it would be like 30 seconds and then another one, and then nothing for 2 minutes. It was just like the whole rhythm felt really out of sync. And I remember distinctly feeling like this doesn't feel right, like something doesn't feel right. Whereas when I was in this natural labor, I really felt, okay, this is cool, like this feels right, this feels like natural, it feels innate. And it didn't. It felt really off. And after about 20 minutes of that, like my husband was just asleep on the bed, because I'm just on the floor, just breathing, trying to get a sense of like what the hell is going on. And he's just sleeping because it's hospital, and he's pretty redundant because they've made him feel pretty redundant the whole time anyway. And after 20 minutes, I felt this really sharp pain that was not a pain I could describe at any other point in life. It was a pain. I was like, shit, something feels really wrong. And at the same time as the sharp pain, bearing in mind this is 20 minutes after the gel has gone on, my waters explode all over the bed. It was very Hollywood, but I felt it as like, I don't know how I could describe the sensation. It was more than a pop. It wasn't like an explosion. It was just like a forceful, like it was like a rupture. That's the way I would describe. I know it's a rupture, but it wasn't like, you know, when your waters go and everyone goes, oh, it felt really good when my waters released. This was not that. My waters released, and the pain went from like weird and odd and quite hard to manage, but I was managing it in a weird way, to off the scale, like I am dying, like this is death, something's wrong. And I had this in my mind. I was just like, oh, my placenta's exploded, which sounds ridiculous, but that I had decided it was that. I was like, something is really wrong, and I felt completely out of control of my body. And whatever this gel was that had gone on, which I think is like a prostaglandin gel or whatever, had come in like as this outside entity and just completely taken over anything. And because I hadn't had any oxytocin building, like it had been 20 minutes of this forced contractions, the fear and the alertness that I felt was off the scale, and I literally thought I was dying. So my husband's like, what on earth? The poor woman, I don't know, in the bed opposite me, she'd been in induction for like 3 days, poor woman, and nothing's happening to her. And I'm like, completely lost my shit. And it's a bit of a blur, but I remember the woman coming in, and I'm like, totally, completely lost it. Like something is wrong, I'm dying, what's going on? And she's just plodding along like, oh, just lie down on the bed and I'll examine you. Like, she's not matching the situation very well. And she's not bearing in mind the first thing I'd put in my birth plan, which no one looked at the whole time, was there was, I'm an abuse survivor. Please know that I need you to tell me exactly what's going on, because that helps me. But they weren't, like, they were like, we're the power and we're not going to tell you what's going on, kind of thing. It was very strange. So she was like, you need to lie down. And I'm like, everything is in pure agony that's beyond anything I could ever describe. And I can't. I'm like, I cannot. I'm like writhing on the bed and like screaming in pain. And she's like, oh, just stay still. Just thinking this is horrendous. And she's like, oh, you're 6 centimeters, so let's go upstairs. And I am feeling the bearing down straight away. And I'm like, this baby is coming out now. I'm not, like, even if I'm 6, it doesn't matter, because she's birthing at 6. Like, it's ejecting. And then this person comes with like this wheelchair, and I'm on this wheelchair, like screamed corridors. It was just horrendous. And she's just like not even talking to me. It's almost like I'm an inconvenience. Like, who is this ridiculous woman? And then takes me past through the next bit, like it's delivery suite, and they're all on the desk like, oh, you're all right, Jenny, or I can't even remember her name, like, you're all right. And she's like, you're all right. And I'm on this chair, literally thinking I'm dying, genuinely thinking I'm dying and something's really wrong. And then they take me into like the delivery room, where it's a totally different bunch of people, and they're trying to like strap me up to these monitors and asking me to lie down. At this point was where I was just like, I cannot lie down, and I just refused. So they had to have like this, I know, student midwife just hold the monitor to me the whole time. I'm just like, for God's sake, because at this point I'm completely on another planet of pain. I was like begging for pain relief because it was too much, and they were like, oh, it's too late for that. But yeah, anyway. And I had then felt the fetal ejection reflex, but I felt at that point something in me did engage, and I knew there was nothing I could do to stop her emerging, but it just felt too fast and too soon, and whirlwind energy. And it was like an ejection, but not even in the way that I experienced it with Rory, where my body's ejecting. It just felt like this drug was ejecting. It was like not my experience anymore. And I felt like it was happening to me. And I remember the moment of, being on the bed on all fours, pushing, and there's about 7 or 8 midwives in the room, all telling me to push. And I'm thinking, whatever I am pushing. And then one of them said, you need to push harder on the next contraction. And I'm thinking, what the hell are you on about? Like, I am not in control. And then the thing is, shit, well, I'm not pushing hard enough. Like, I can't push any, there's nothing left. So that was shit. And I remember just feeling like I'd kind of left my body, I think, because I'd just gone, do you know what? I'm gone. This is shit. And I was looking down on my birth experience, because I can see it now. And I looked down on my experience all the time. When she was emerging, I don't have a memory of the sensation. I just remember sharp pain. And then she flew out. And I know that I came back down when she emerged, and I had her on my chest. And I remember looking at her, and I didn't feel love or the oxytocin feeling. I just felt shock, maybe, but grief was the main feeling. And she looked at me, and if she'd have had a voice, she would have literally just been like, what the fuck just happened? What the fuck just happened? That would have been it. Her eyes were just like on. She was this beautiful pink color. She was they all said, oh, look at her, you know, she's an English rose, and she was beautiful. She was tiny, but she was screaming with like, what the hell? And I was kind of the same. And there's one picture that they took after birth. I don't know why I didn't want a picture taken. And you can see in my eyes, like, I'm checked out, like I'm not there. And then after that, you know, it's all the stuff of like, they catheterized me because I couldn't wee. Because I was in so much shock, I couldn't get the placenta out. I just couldn't. And that, it turns out that's a pattern in my births. And I actually think like there's something energetically with me with the placenta, like handing it over to me. It's like I can't quite make that step of like, it's all you now. It's like something about the responsibility, because that's what I see. Like when you lose that placenta, it is like you, that's the first mother. And I definitely think that's a pattern in my births, that I really need help through that third stage. Like it's more mental, emotional. But they were like, you need to get the placenta out now, because otherwise you're gonna have to surgery. And I was like, there is no way. So I'm like literally ripping, you know, and they pulled it out, and yeah, that was that. We did get it encapsulated, so that was like one thing that they let me take the placenta. But you know, there was a lot of blood. There was it was just completely traumatic, to be honest. And then we got wheeled to another place because they were like, well, you need to get out of the room now, really. And I said I didn't want to move the room until I had the first breastfeed, which we had not had. We couldn't establish, but they were just, you know, it was very much like, you need to get out because someone's coming in, kind of thing. You know, said you've got 20 minutes left, so you can either have a shower or try and establish the feed. And like, yeah, it was a mess. So then they moved me downstairs and told my husband he had to go home. So I'm in this ward with like maybe 6 other women and babies, that nobody told me where the toilet was. Nobody told me or told me where I could get drinking water. There was no food. And then my baby was like obviously put, you know, Bonnie was put in this plastic box. And it was honestly the weirdest night in my life. And I couldn't wait to get out of there. But I just wasn't prepared at all for that. And there was no one there to be kind or help me breastfeed. So she kept waking, trying to feed, and she couldn't. She was probably starved the first 3-4 days. She couldn't latch. I couldn't really get much colostrum. I was in complete shock, to be honest. So that was a mess. And when we went home, all I really felt again was grief. It was the time where I only felt grief for my own mother. So it was like she wasn't there to be with me. She wasn't there to support me, and all that grief was just that. So it wasn't like this supported, beautiful time. I remember a couple of days after she was born, family came round because I was at my in-laws' house. So I couldn't really unravel because, you know, they're your in-laws. They're not your, like, I wasn't that close with them at that point. And I remember people coming round and wanting to hold the baby, and me feeling like terrified and not wanting to let them, but just letting them, you know, just ignoring myself the whole time, but really wanting to like cry because I was so traumatized. And all I could hear in my head was like babies crying that weren't there, and like my phone ringing. And that, I think that was because when I felt that sharp pain, when that I'd got like the waters ruptured, and it just went from 0 to 100, and I completely like flipped out. My phone was ringing weirdly. So I just kept hearing my phone ringing and babies crying that weren't there. It was like serious PTSD. It was horrendous. And I really struggled to come back from that. And I fell into a very, very dark place. I would say that experience was one of the worst experiences of my life, and it shouldn't have been. But that was because I'd ignored myself, because I'd kind of just you know, someone else could have that experience and be okay, but for me it wasn't. It was torture, and it was like my birth was just taken away. So I really struggled to bond with Bonnie. Breastfeeding, you know, we tried for a good 4 or 5 weeks, it just didn't work out. I had a lot of crap advice as well. So, you know, after that, I really struggled with mothering, I think. Yeah, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the first one. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Birth,
So
the birth does, you know, so much affect breastfeeding and bonding as we know.
yeah,
And I'm so sorry that that happened to you. It really does sound like had you stayed at home that day, you might have just had a birth at home or, you know, just naturally birthed anyways. But I guess that's the thing. I think that's why you wanted to share this before your redemption birth that we're going to dive on into soon. For maybe I know you said before we started that you wanted women to hear, because I think a lot of women think that, well, I'm strong and I've done hypnobirthing, or I've done yoga and meditation, and I'm this and that. I'm gonna just be able to do my thing in the hospital. And it's so easy to be railroaded, and we're so primed as women to be that good girl. Everyone, me as well, like all of us. It's part of having a lot of estrogen, you know, agreeable hormone. But it's also conditioning, of course, of being a woman. And then it is coming into that hierarchical system where the language, you know, if you're lucky, you can go into a place that has so much awareness and meet a midwife or a doctor who does have that very woman-centered care approach. But generally, that's still not the mainstream. You do hear, I'm just going to do this to you. We're just going to do this. Oh, you've agreed to an induction now, so we're just going to do that, even though you're 2 centimeters, or even though things are obviously happening for you. You agreed to it. You're here. It's a factory, and it is a factory.
yeah,
Just like you experienced that they wouldn't let you stay in that birth room until you and your baby had finally, you know, found that breastfeeding. It's because it's a factory system.
yeah,
It's, you know, in and out, in and out, in and out. And you have to do that in that certain amount of time and all of that. But wowzers, it sounds like you birthed within an hour after the gel or something. Is that kind
yeah.
of, yeah.
My labor's recorded as an hour and 15 minutes. And that was also like, everyone's like, oh, so lucky. I'm like, no. There
No,
was nothing great about that birth.
no.
Nothing. It was terrifying.
A really precipitous birth can be experienced. I mean, I think it shocks, I think, all women who have a really, and precipitous is kind of that, like an
Yeah,
hour, maybe two max, right? It's a really quick birth, because it is shocking. It's just like a train running through you. You have no
yeah,
control. But if that happens in an environment where you feel fully loved, supported, I think you can come out of that still with
yeah,
shock, still feeling like what the beep happened, and like probably still being shocked with your baby on your breast, and like maybe having hours before the placenta comes out sometimes, like time for that to like the body to go like, okay, I'm safe to let the placenta go now. Because when you've
mhm,
had a really fast birth, that can be one of the things. You can also bleed, but it depends also, where are you? Are you feeling loved, safe, supported? Then you can have that kind of birth and still come out of it not feeling like you felt, obviously, because you got the absolute opposite all the way through.
yeah, yeah. And you know, it was important because it made me see so much about the system didn't really care about me or my wants or desires or my history. It just cared about getting me in and out and getting an alive baby
Yes.
at whatever expense. And that expense would never have been worth it for me. It sounds ridiculous, but if I could have had, you know, like with my second birth, I had to go like, well, what if my baby dies? Because you have to go there. Um, it's not a nice thing to think, but for me, I had to go there because this is what everyone's afraid of, right? It's okay. Well, if that happens, if I'm in a hospital, that is not where I want to be. Even if that happens, you know, if I knew something was off, you know, I'd seek medical care. But if I knew no better, I'd want to be at home in love and dignity where I feel safe. Because the level of emotional safety that happens in that hard moment is gonna make it way better than, you know. And I honestly, it was not worth it for me. In fact, it was not safer actually for Bonnie either. Like, you know, we had to do a lot of work homeopathically on her birth imprint, a lot, because she, at the age of like, she couldn't feed, she would get to the breast and scream. It was like she was not interested in breastfeeding. That's like a genuine, because she was not ready to be born. She was not ready for survival, because that wasn't what she was wired to do. And she would just check out. She was either really sleepy, she was constipated, so she couldn't poo, she had really painful gas. And when she was about 4 or 5 months, she started to get night terrors, like genuine night terrors. So that was when we'd found homeopathy. And actually, homeopathy for me was what got me out of this seriously traumatized state. And then obviously that's what led me to train as a homeopath, because I saw, okay, well, when we're in this mess and there's no one out there who's helping me with this birth trauma, then, you know, this was what helped me in, and it was profound. And it did lead me to then started to listen to your podcast, because before maybe I'd worked on homeopathy, so maybe Bonnie was 1 year old when I started to be able to think about birth. And I was very much like, I'm one and done. There's no way I'd ever have a baby again. No way. Like, I hated postpartum, I hated like birth. It was all of that. And started to listen to your podcast because it popped up, and I don't know why, but before that point, I couldn't listen to a birth story that was like, or watch a home birth video, or listen to even like a natural birth center birth story, or see water births. I really wanted to be in the water with my first. So I couldn't do that because it brought up so much sadness in me, again, grief. Because it was like, I can't have that, I didn't have that, and I should have had that, or, you know, all of those things. But once I'd reached peace in my birth and I wasn't like a nervous system wreck all the time, I did start to listen. I was like, okay, these are really nice stories, and like, oh, and really getting more informed on like the actual system and the workings of it, and really learning literally everything I could about birth, you know, everything. So I was learning, you know, absolutely everything I could about all the things that can go wrong, you know, just all aspects of birth. I'd really dove deep. I was researching loads, like more than ever. And I think that was like a really important place that I had to go to then get back to like a neutral point. You know, sometimes you need to like really learn about something to then be like, okay, I feel like I've got some authority on this now to make better decisions. But ultimately, what had shifted was I saw the system for what it was, and there are good people in it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that they're still beholden to something that's way above them. That ultimately is like harming women, honestly. And I had decided, you know, after listening to your podcast, I was like, do you know what? I remember there was one I listened to. It's still my favorite one of your podcasts, on a long drive. And it was when I was on my way to teach, I was going on a pregnancy yoga training. And it was the one where she was like 44 weeks or 43 weeks, and she was Irish, and she home birthed at home by a pool, by her Christmas tree. And her daughter ended up having like a heart defect or something. She'd had that really long labor, and it was like, I know, I just remember that story really being one that changed things. I don't know if it's because she was like Irish, and like my family are Irish, and I could relate to her, whereas like maybe I couldn't relate to like Australians or Americans or something. I don't know. She just felt, it just was weird for me that story changed it, and was the point where I thought, I think next time I would like to birth at home and have a free birth. And we'd moved out by this point, right? And then once I decided that, and I'd got my cycle back, because it actually went again. I had secondary infertility just because of the amount of trauma I was carrying. I'd had a good few cycles and done a lot of detox work, and really done a lot of preconception prep this time. I decided, like, okay, let's have another baby. And we were like, let's just try this month. And, because it will probably take a few months, 6 months or whatever. No, straight away, knew I was pregnant. I knew the day that I was pregnant way before I got a positive test because I was so much more in tune with my body. I just knew. And before I got pregnant, I'd seen the birth of my next two babies. I've only got two now, but I'm not sure I'd have a third, but I've seen a birth. And I had seen them being this really calm, empowering experience. And I knew that Rory, who's my second born, my boy, I knew he was ready to come in. He was right behind me, and I felt him just ready to come in. He was around a few months before we decided, but it was because I'd also decided this is how I'm going to do birth this time. And I'd learned so much. I'd gleaned a lot of wisdom from my first experience. I wasn't going to take any shit anymore, to be honest. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And I'd like binged your podcasts, to the nines at this point. So felt good about it really. And, the minute I conceived, which was like straight away, his energy was different. He was very sturdy and calm, but he's very strong and very masculine, which was interesting because I really did feel like that warrior. It was like a warrior energy that I had that all through my pregnancy. And I would, go to the gym and I'd have to do like boxing. I just had to like get it out of my system. So much different. I'd gone from being like maybe a bit of a victim in my first pregnancy to being very like sovereign in my second, and like, this is the thing, I've got enough information, and even if all the information in the world, I'm still okay making this choice with the consequence of what I know, because that will be the best choice for me and my family. And it was very much like, I will never have that experience again, ever. I cannot do that again. I will not do that to myself or my baby. I want to breastfeed, like all of these things. I won't do it again. So I started to go to my NHS midwife appointments, and I went to my first one and said, well, I'm going to have a home birth. And she's just like, oh, we'll see. She's like, I love home birth. I've had 6 babies, but, it is dangerous and it does come with risk. And I said, well, if you don't let me have a home birth, I'll just free birth. And she was like, she was just not happy about this. She said, it's really dangerous. And I was like, well, then you need to turn up for the home birth because that's what it will be. And if something's wrong, we'll go to hospital. It's cool. I'm just so different in this pregnancy. And she puts, the booking appointment is this long, annoying appointment where they're just doing all the things. And she comes out at the end, and she said, what was the weight of your first baby? Well, she was £6.3 or £6.13. So like, fine. And I actually lied in the appointment and said that she was heavier than she was, so that they wouldn't have something to high risk me for. So I said, oh, she was, I think she's about like 7 pounds 5 or something like that. And it still came back that I was high risk. At the end, she went, well, you're high risk. And I just remember thinking, okay, so computer says no. Is this what we're doing? She says, oh, your previous baby's too small, so you're going to have to go on aspirin. And I was like, let me just stop you there. I've looked at the research, and actually, because I already knew about the aspirin studies, it's not even evidence-based. It's actually for women. It's not even helpful for small babies. The study is in a completely different population, and it's based on overweight women. Like, it's just, there's no evidence to support it. Maybe it was like a 0.083% slightly helpful. So why am I taking aspirin? Like, no. So off the back foot, she did not like me, because everything she said, even about Pregnacare, which is like this supplement they love in the UK, which is shit. It's full of folic acid. It's not helpful. She was like, well, what are you going to take instead? I was like, well, I'll eat beef liver. And it's just like, who is this woman? She did not like me. But anyway, we played the game. I said, I'm just going to play the game, because what I don't want is social services on my door, because they're quite hot round here, social services. And there was a woman that free birthed a town down, and the day after she'd free birth, social services came to her door, and she had a real difficult time. So I was like, okay, I need to pick my battles here. Do I want someone in my postpartum space creating stress, or do I want to play the game? And I
Yeah.
picked, I'm going to play the game. But it turns out you can't play the game. You're either in or you're out. That's honestly, round by me, you're in or you're out.
Yeah.
So I played the game. She's right, you just need to go for a growth scan. Oh, fucking hell, here we go. 32 and 36 weeks. So I played the game. And it turned out, I went to my appointment for that last scan, ready to be like, whatever you decide, I'm home birthing. Everything's fine because my pregnancy was great. I was fit. I felt amazing. I felt really prepared for any emergency that would come up. I'd literally done like home birth emergencies training with she's a birthkeeper, but she was a midwife for 40 years. I'd done a lot of things that I was like ready for what would come up and happy to deal with that. And I was basically just not going to call the midwife. That was my plan. But she had said to me, if you don't call me, you need to phone an ambulance. And if you don't phone an ambulance, I will know that you didn't phone an ambulance.
Oh
Because
my.
it was basically like, you need to do that or I'll flag you. That was the message behind it. And I remember thinking, I don't want you in my house. But anyway, I go to this appointment and actually it was like, oh, your baby's measuring fine. You can have a home birth. Off you go. And I was like, oh, well, that was easy. So I was really happy with that because it was one less battle. But also I kind of was just like, I still don't want her there. So she came round to my house a couple of days later for this home birth visit. And she had walked in my house, and my house it's my sanctuary, right? And I have this really nice oak coffee table. And it's like the second or third thing she said. She handed me a bag of like stuff that was for the home birth. And then she said, oh, that's such a lovely coffee table. And then I said, oh, thank you. We got it off Marketplace, which is like, Facebook Marketplace. And she said, she just turned to her student midwife, who was a different one every time. She says, that's where we're going to set up the resus table. Make a note. And it was that point that something in me was like, I'm done. You're not coming in my house and I'm discharging myself. I don't trust you. It was that point specifically when she decided that my coffee table was she'd walked in my house and just seen medicalised. Where can I medicalise? Where can I medicalise? Where can I hospitalise you? And all the home birth visit was all the things that would go wrong and all the points at which she'd medicalise me and all the points at which she'd take me to hospital. Nothing else. And I played the game for the appointment, and she walked out the door. And I burst into tears because I could see where we were going. And I knew I did not want her in my house. I didn't want her near my house. I didn't want to see her again. It's quite funny actually now, because this is a side note, but now obviously I'm working as a doula in my community. I've actually got to attend a home birth with her in a few months. But it's different now because I get she was doing her job. She was a medical midwife. She was there to do medical things, right? But I didn't trust her. So
Can I ask, like, was she the only option? Could you not change midwives, or did you just know that they were all the same in that group? Or
So how it works around here is you have community midwives, and it could be her that comes to your birth. So she's like, I will try and come if I'm on call or on shift, or it will be anyone else. So someone I don't know. And I don't have like a big sisterhood wound. I think I did have like a bit of a wound around not trusting anyone, hence why I wanted to free birth, which when I checked in after this, I realized, it was deeper than that. I did want someone there I deeply trusted, and I wanted to be witnessed and held by women more than I wanted to be alone. But my decision to want to free birth was very much from a like rebellion place. It wasn't rooted in truly what I wanted. It was rooted in rebellion. So I think that wouldn't have been the right choice, but that was where I was at. I was going to free birth, but couldn't change me. I could change midwives, but I would have had to travel to Codsall. And honestly, I had a phone call with like the head of community midwives, and it was just that same fake woman-centered care.
Yeah.
You know, she wasn't in on it. Like, I know a couple of midwives up north who were like, you know, I've got my midwife handcuffs on. I've got to tell you this. Or like if I'd have been 3 miles down the road, I would have fallen under Shropshire. And they're really good. They've got really good home midwives. And actually, they've got like a breech consultant at the hospital. And one of my clients who transferred last month, she walked in and he said, right, what do you want to do? You can birth this baby vaginally. That's fine. Or we can do a section. It's up to you. You know,
Fantastic. I
what a
love,
great consultant,
yeah.
right?
How it
Not
should
here.
be. How it should be.
Yeah, I know. It's
That
like,
should
oh,
be the
this
norm.
man's amazing, but actually he's just like doing his job. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, it wasn't good. And I was done. I was done with the NHS. I was done. So I'd gone to my husband. I was like, okay, can we please explore independent midwives? Like, maybe there isn't one, but I need someone anyway to do a notification of birth because I'm just going to do it on my own, which wasn't really, like I said, what I wanted. But then I got in the position where my midwife knew that if I had planned to free birth, she was going to call social services. So I had realized at this point, if she came to my house, I wouldn't feel safe. And if I free birthed, my postpartum, which I was working so hard to protect this time, I didn't want anyone around. I wanted food train. It was like going to be totally different. It was all about breastfeeding and nurture and recovery was going to be disturbed. So I kind of was stuck between a rock and a hard place. And the only way out was through an independent midwife, really, so that I could have the least hassle. And it turned out, it's quite funny because my independent midwife found she and her second midwife, because you have to have two in the UK, they both had free birthed their babies. My midwife, Lucy, she had a very traumatic birth with her first, even though she was a midwife. It was horrendous. She still doesn't really talk about it. She's told me details. It's really, really bad. And her second, she free birthed at home. So I know when I knew that about her, and she's part of the Association for Radical Midwives and her second, I really knew that she got where I was coming from because she says, and this is so funny, but she would say, the NHS actively hates women. She would say that with like, no, they do. Like that is the culture. And I just found that really extreme, but she's not an extreme person. She's a very level-headed, calm person, but she would say that with real seriousness. So anyway, when I found her and I found she free birthed, she was very much like, what do you want to do? I can attend your birth, or I can do a notification. And I explained and I said, I actually do want to be witnessed. I just want people that aren't going to sabotage my birth. I want people that will just watch it and support me, and then will, with a medical head, step in if there's an actual issue. That's what I want. I want sisterhood. I want support. I want people who will just do what midwives are actually supposed to do. And there wasn't anyone around here really that did that. So she was about an hour away, so that was good. And like our first meeting was great. She didn't use the electric fetal Doppler. She used like the fetal scope.
Oh, fetal scope.
Yeah. She just palpated, and we sat and drank tea. She talked about babies and breastfeed. It was just totally different. She was like, I can do a urine test if you want. She's just very chill and exactly what I asked for. And that was at 37 weeks I changed care. So it is not too late.
Yeah.
If you're feeling the heebie-jeebies. So yeah, that was that. And then I felt really at peace and I was like, cool, I'm ready to be pregnant to like 44 weeks, because part of me was actually very scared of being a mum of two. My eldest at the time was very hard work. She was 2. She just turned 2, but we found out only a couple of months ago she's actually deaf. So she had a lot of issues because basically she couldn't talk or communicate, and she was very, very challenging. So I was actually very happy to be pregnant for a long time because I was like, I don't think I'm going to cope. But all was well, and so I didn't stay pregnant to 44 weeks. I went into labor at 40 and 5, I think, something like that. Yeah. So yeah. So how it started, the day before that, I had been having like prodrome or whatever, just prep contractions for a long time, for a couple of weeks. Every time I went to have a wee, I would get this whopper of a contraction. I was like, this isn't normal. This definitely isn't right. Wees were excruciating, and I was like, this is horrible, honestly.
Must have been your baby was lying, and I guess as you were sitting on the toilet,
Yeah.
somehow the baby came further down, and that triggered that feedback loop. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something like that. And he was wonky. He had to have a lot of cranial sacral therapy when he was born because he couldn't, like, one side he would feed because of his head position. It would be like serious nipple trauma. So there was definitely, he was lying in a funny position, and he was back to back pretty much the whole last few weeks, despite doing all yoga and all of those things. He was back to back. So like the day before I went into labor, it was a heat wave in the UK. So it was about 38 degrees. It was like unbearable, but we're in the garden at my mum-in-law's, and my little one was in the paddling pool. And I just remember thinking, like, this is probably the last time we'll do this as a family of 3. I'd been nesting and making cakes, and it was all good. And yeah, it was a nice day. And I went to the bathroom when I was there, and there was like all my mucus plug there. And I was just like, oh, in my mind, obviously doesn't mean anything. But I'd not lost anything with Bonnie because obviously I wasn't ready, and I was ramped into forceful ejection. So yeah, when I lost my mucus plug, I was like, ooh, it could be happening. But also don't get excited, so that whole thing. But then after I'd put Bonnie to bed on that night, bearing in mind it was a very hot night, and where we live opposite this pub. It's closed down now, right? But it's a pub, but it's rowdy, and it's like, I don't want to be like mean about this pub, but like people would go and get absolutely really drunk there, and then they'd be out on the car park really noisy and doing like just horrible foul language, and like there'd be karaoke, and it was always awful. Like the people singing was always awful and just hilarious. And on a summer's night, they'd open the door and you'd get like the party music playing. So it was just really weird. And I remember like things started to just begin, that cute period cramping, and I'm sitting there and I'm like watching this pub over the road, and there's like this couple outside, like really getting it on, and it was really inappropriate, and it was just really strange. And I was just like, this is weird. And this is not like blissful labor, because this karaoke is going on. This weird couple are like getting it on in public, and it's really inappropriate. Everyone's drunk out on the street. I remember just being like, this is so odd. And it's really hot. And I was like, I'm just going to go to bed. But because I knew that things were beginning, they were very rhythmic. I was like, I'm going to set up the birth pool now because I love my husband. He's not practical. And I just wanted to know that it was sorted. And I'd done loads of trial runs because, working out where the tap's going to go and all that. So I set up the birth pool and went off to bed. And I woke a few times in the night. Maybe I woke at like 2 a.m. for a few hours and went back downstairs. Yeah, I definitely remember waking at 2 a.m. and it was a bit more intense. And kind of moving around and be like, what am I doing? I'm just going to go back to bed. So I was definitely sleeping through early labor. And then I woke up maybe around 7 in the morning, and my daughter woke up. I remember from that point being unable to talk through a contraction. It was intense. And my husband straight away is like, do you think we should call Lucy? Because we're all worried that after my first labor, this one's going to be like this rip-roaring 20-minute thing, because that's what we've got to measure the first labor on. So that was the thing. And I'm trying to like make breakfast for my little one, and she's it's just a lot. And I'm like, you know what? I wanted her there for the birth, but I've completely changed my mind. Like, I need to just be in labor. Like, this is a lot. And I'm like closing my eyes and breathing through the sensation. So it was a lot. And I remember my mum-in-law coming, and the whole thing was a bit dreamy. And I'm like in my pajamas, just floating around the house. Um, and at about 8:30, Alex was like, I really think we should phone the midwife, because I'm like making low-key noise. I'm on the floor, kind of already, it's quite intense. And he did. So I've got my notes here, which is quite nice because I just read through them for the first or second time maybe. And she arrived at 9:30. And she did actually listen in. I asked her to listen into baby with the fetoscope, because I wasn't worried that she was gonna do any much with it unless it was horrendous. She's just gonna listen and be like, cool. And she was fine, and she palpated, because I had a feeling he was back to back, but my labor wasn't in my back. So people say it was back labor. It wasn't in my back. It was very much in the normal place, but it was just a lot. I spent most of the labor on my hands and knees around the house, standing up, just getting my husband to do loads of compressions on my hips, because that was good pain relief. But even at a certain point, those hip compressions they did nothing. It was like, okay, we're just getting into territory where I've got to submit to this sensation, because it's bigger than me. I can't resist it. I can't go anywhere. I can't escape it. I just have to become it and really just surrender to it. And so, yeah, like everything felt great. It was really hot. There was one fan for the whole household, and obviously I had that fan. So, it was like 38 degrees, like I say, it was tough. And when Lucy came, she did just sit there. I don't remember her being around or anything. I was passing a lot of poops. Just kept remembering to go for a wee, had an electrolyte drink, and it wasn't anything difficult really. It was very internal. There was no distractions, but the main thing was it was like it was moving at a natural pace, which was a lot nicer than, say, the first labor. But he was definitely back to back. Lucid confirmed his back to back. I knew he was. And I think that was why the labor was so long. I think my uterus was working very, very hard to turn him. I'm sorry. My uterus was working really, really hard to turn him around that whole time, because the contractions were long and intense and hard. And they were maybe about 90 seconds long, like every 2 minutes, really. That's what's written here. But I just remember thinking that they just went on forever and ever and ever. And they just felt like they never ended. But around like 11, it's quite funny, because around 11 in the morning, Lucy's preparing the room for birth. And she says contractions sound more expulsive. And I remember that point, that things started to feel very low. And it was hard. And I'm like on the floor vocalizing. And I remember thinking in my head, oh, we're not far off here. And I remember them starting to sort of prepare the room. There was a bit of movement, and she's written preparing the room for birth. So that's quite interesting, because I remember thinking it won't be long now. It's like, what, 20 more minutes? Little did I know it was not 20 more minutes. Because the pain was a lot then, and I was like, I need relief. And she said, you could get in the pool now if you wanted, because I had said, don't let me get in it too soon, because I want it to be my last like pain relief option. Because the comb, that wasn't doing anything. This comb is not gonna, so yeah, I get in the pool, and that was at 11:55. So we've still got like 3 hours to go. But at that point I was like, oh, it won't be much longer. I can feel it really low down, and I'm like very grunty and growly. But we were there for a long time of these really absolutely overwhelming. There's no words to describe how big the sensation was. But because I had had the slow lean into each one, every time I got to like this new frontier where it was like, oh, we're going to level up now, it wasn't out of nowhere. It was just like, here's a level up, cranking up one level, to the point where I had no, like I say, I had no option but to literally become the sensation. And probably around this point when I'm in the pool, it was very trippy. And I honestly was in a complete altered state of consciousness at this point. And I had lost my grandma in that pregnancy. It was very, very close to my grandma. And there was a point at some time where I was just between each contraction, just on the side of the pool in deep rest. And I had seen her very, very clearly. I'd made like a birth altar and there was a picture of her on there. I'd seen her very clearly, like her face. She was smiling. She was holding Rory in her arms, and she was like, it's time for him to come in now. And just feeling this like ancestral strength, I guess is the word, that they were all there behind me and I wasn't alone, and that actually I was surrounded and embalmed in just love. Like my husband was it was like his domain, whereas in the hospital he was just off on the side, shoved away. Whereas he was like with me the whole time. And when he had to leave, Lucy was with me. There was no point where someone wasn't with me in it, but no one was saying anything or trying to get me out of it. Nothing like that. So that was the point where I felt I could really like touch the core of it. The sensations would come. I'd bellow and roar and vocalize and just submit to it and kind of like flop around the pool like Shamu or something. And then I would go into deep rest and being like this just reservoir of total peace and, blissful rest. I don't know. It was really deep and great. And that must have been 3 hours of time passed, because I remember at one point I'm in the pool and I'm thinking, this is maybe just before transition. I report that I've passed urine, like that's what it says there, but actually got this really overwhelming contraction that just was like upper level, that was just too much. And then there was a pop and I knew that was my waters releasing. But it was interesting because I think that once he had turned around, it was like he dropped down and he engaged, and it was like, bang, we are ready to go. So it was like the uterus, my womb just had this intelligence of how to move him. We were just doing this spirally dance, and then he just dropped down. And from that point on, I start to feel like, like my logical brain coming in. And it starts to creep in, and there's like, I don't know if I could do this any longer. Just like starts as this internal dialogue. And I'm like, you could do it. And these other voices like, this is transition. It's fine. This is transition. You're fine. And it's like, I can't take it anymore. He's really low. It's not going to be long now. And, all of that. And at that point, I started shivering violently. That was still 2 hours before he was born. I literally was like, oh no, like he'll be born soon. This is transition, because my logical mind was like kicking in a lot. And then I had this kind of, I would say, 2 hour reckoning with myself, which is just like this weird inner, I don't know, it was like two sides of me having this weird debate. I don't know, it was crazy. But at that point, I was shivering violently and I really couldn't get control on it. So I knew that the adrenaline was kicking in. But around maybe an hour later, I'm just done with the pain. I can't get past it. I've become it, but it's like my adrenaline's kicked in. I remember feeling like, okay, I want to get out the pool, but I can't I can't move. I can't get out. I can't go anywhere. Like, what do I do? And then, my husband's so funny. He's like, getting in the pool, because Lucy says, I think you should get in the pool now. She's obviously sensing that transition's approaching, and I'm kind of like logically just lost my mind. He gets in, he's like, there's a poo here, like, should I move it? And it was so funny, and everyone's like giggling in the room, and I'm like laughing internally because I can't laugh out loud because I'm so like in it. I just remember Lucy going, oh, if they float, move them, but the sinkers we just leave. And I'm just like finding this so funny in my head. It's just like so silly. Um, and then he kind of gets back out the pool. I don't know why. He's like, he keeps saying the music was wrong, but we were listening to like Nessie Gomez. It was really nice. And then he kind of leans over the pool, and I'm like gone off in some other dimension. And he goes, oh, and bearing in mind, I'm in quite a fearful, weird, shaky place. Like it's just a weird time for me in the labour. And he goes, do you want me to put Oasis on? And I just like looked at him, and in my head, I'm just like, I don't give a fucking shit. Like, what? You put anything on, babe. I don't care. Anything is fine. But I remember in my head, I'm like, what are you on about? And Lucy just kind of leant over and said, at this point, when a woman's birthing, at this point, it's normal for her not to be able to talk. It's just like, so that's quite funny. And I don't know if Oasis went on, I don't know. Anyway, it's by the by. But what was interesting is at that point, I really lost it. I feel he's dropped down. I felt his head emerging. I'm like, oh, okay, he's there. And it says that I said he's pushing down now. And I was screaming with contractions, which is definitely accurate because at this point, I'd lost that big moan. I actually was like, just the sensation of the stretching was so intense. And because the fetal ejection reflex had suddenly took over, I think it just mirrored that thing with Bonnie that I felt a little bit, and I felt a bit like this is too quick, this is too quick. And it says here in my notes, Cassie's reporting it's too quick, it's too much, and then appears transitional, which is quite funny because Lucy said, do you think this could be transition? And I'm like, no, I was in transition ages ago. And she's like, okay, everything's fine, everything's normal, you're doing it. And I just thought, for God's sake, buy into the drama. But also I was like, he's not coming out. He's not these. And I literally, you can see it in the birth video. I'm like looking around, I'm going, he's not coming out. He's not coming out. And everyone's just looking at me, just looking back with love and admiration. And I'm like, you don't understand. He is not coming out, and like trying to convince everyone when of course it was fine.
Yeah.
So then there's one big stretch, and it was quite painful when his head emerged. I won't lie. Like everyone said that your second just slips out. This is not true. It was a lot. And then once his head was out, just before that, it was funny because Braveheart had come on the music, and the theme tune to Braveheart, right? The film. But why it's funny is because when my mum passed, she was obsessed with Braveheart as a film, and she loved that piece of music. And whether you believe it or not, one of my mum's best friends went to see a medium, and she said, if you ever hear Braveheart playing on music, that's her. That's how she's letting you know she's there. And I just found that really funny. And then, the place was on shuffle. It wasn't like anyone had planned it. We were in the pool. And just at that point where I'm losing my mind, I'm like, he's not coming out, Braveheart started playing. And I kind of laughed, but also I was like, that's my mum. Like, she's here. Everything's fine. Even if it wasn't, even if it was coincidence, it gave me what I needed, right? And then, his head came out, and I just knew he was there. And I'm like, oh my God, his head's out. I can feel his head. And then I'm like, fine, this is easy from now. He'll just slip out. Well, no, because he waited a long time in the water. And, I was like, oh, I haven't tore. Everything's fine. His head's out. But being Rory, as I know him, he literally, I felt him turn. But because I was so done, I kind of pushed with that contraction, and he like barged his shoulder out, and that was when I felt like what I think was when I tore. It wasn't bad, but like it was that barge, and then he flew out across the pool, and I picked him up in my own hands and put him on my chest, and he was red, and he was just like fierce and strong. And it was great. And I remember that point feeling, okay, like I've done it, like I'm complete, and I did it. and no one took it from me, and I'm never doing it again. And I remember when I was in that moment floating around the pool going, oh my God, his head's not coming out, and the amount of pain I'm in now is not okay. And, you know, this stupid logical brain. There was a voice inside of me that said, Cassie, if you ever want another baby, remember this moment when past you is telling future you not to do it, which is just so funny because now I always think of that, but I know that I'll probably have another baby and then just be laughing at the same thing. But that was the point where it just felt a bit too much, but it's just in keeping with my personality, a bit dramatic. So yeah, it's funny. So yeah, and he was just a survivor from the moment go. You know, he got on the breast, we got at the pool, we were eating pizza because home birth, you can order pizza, which is just great. And he was just like crawling to the breast, very vital, and he got straight on there and latched. We did struggle with feeding afterwards, like that is true. For a few weeks, had tongue tie, but we got there, and you know, he had a great breastfeeding journey, so that was great. And that was the main goal of the birth, was to establish breastfeeding, which sounds off. It wasn't actually even more about the redemption. That was part of it, but it was really about establishing feeding, because everything was like, if you do that, it will mess up feeding. If you do that, it will mess up feeding. And that was what I wanted. So that was great, because I had a lot of grief around breastfeeding, which was hugely difficult as well with my first, you know, to see people breastfeeding and just cry in public. It was terrible. But yeah, then I just wanted the placenta out. Like it was 20 minutes after he was born. I was like, I just want the placenta out. I'm done. And once that's out, I can relax, but I don't like that part. And again, had a lot of trouble getting the placenta out. I think it took about an hour of trying, and I kind of then decided, okay, I'm gonna take a homeopathic remedy, because obviously that's what I do, it's my trade, and it was the only one I used in my birth. And as soon as I used pulsatilla, by the way, and as soon as it touched my mouth, it just dropped out. It literally just dropped out within seconds. So that was great. And it's still in the
For anyone
yeah.
who doesn't know what that homeopathic remedy is, do you want to tell us?
Oh, yeah. So there's a few remedies for when you can't seem to get your placenta to move. There are others for like postpartum hemorrhage and stuff like that. So it obviously depends. But if everything's fine, you just want the placenta out. It's either Sakali, which is one remedy, or pulsatilla. Pulsatilla is a great remedy for all things, for weak labor where you can't seem to get it going, getting fed up and stuff. But it's also one. The big thing about pulsatilla is it struggles to step through to the next level. You know, it always wants to hold back. So for me, that really mirrors my emotions around the placenta, and that's why it's such a good remedy, because I know that from that point on, it's like just me, and I am in full responsibility. And I think that's something I struggled with until really being a mum of two, because I think I outsourced so much in my first pregnancy and was such a victim and just thought I couldn't do things and I couldn't be a good mom. So, but this birth obviously changed that imprinting in my brain. It rewired my brain completely, because it's what it does. And I will say that my postpartum with Rory was amazing. You know, I tore. So I had a 2nd-degree tear, which I just lay with my legs together, took lots of arnica, calendula. I did take hypericum as well. So those are all 3 great homeopathics you can do for tearing. And, you know, just lay with my legs together, and that was it. And it healed within sort of 10 days. And it was a 2nd-degree tear. So I didn't want to go to hospital and get stitches, couldn't be bothered. Yeah. After that great birth, I was like, I'm not going to hospital. But I did struggle postpartum with Rory about the 3-month mark. No, 8-week mark, sorry. I started to feel that heavy postpartum depression kick in. So I do wonder why. I'm still not sure on that. I don't know if it's something I'm prone to. I don't know. I don't know if it's just lack of support. You know, haven't got my mum.
Yeah.
Haven't really got a support network. And I've worked really hard since instead of, you know, moaning about there not being a village,
Yeah.
I'm kind of trying to be that for mums
Yeah.
in my own way. And I've got like, instead of complaining, I've created that. So now my midwife is one of my mum friends, you know, she has 2 kids, so we hang out. I've got another few mum friends that have built after this birth, and we all look after each other where we can, you know, bring in herbs when someone's sick, try and take food. And that's why I'm really big on like trying to do that when mums are giving birth in my community. I'll take food, can't take a lot, I'm not the best cook, but I do try and get us all together, because the only way we're going to change it is by just doing that. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think the support's not there for me, and I do worry about myself postpartum. So that will probably, I think that's the next thing I need to conquer, is postpartum, because it's a messy time, but I seem to really, really struggle. And homeopathy helped take the edge off, but I still went to quite a difficult place. And I just don't know why that is, even though breastfeeding was good. You know, we'd established an amazing birth, and I can't tell you why that is. So that's definitely the one thing that's like a point of reflection. But otherwise, it was incredible, and it was great, and it was how it should have been, you know, family birth, and was left alone. It was perfection, and I'd love to do it again, but also, yeah, past me told future me not to.
I love that. There's so much with this birth that comes to mind. First, you know, when you were speaking about, you know, for anyone listening who was like, oh, she felt a lot of adrenaline, and that's a natural part of physiological birth, just for anyone who doesn't know that. And that comes at the end of the birth to help you get back into kind of your neocortex, actually, to bring you back to be able to also get that kind of extra human strength, in a sense. Like it's there to help you birth your baby, truly. And then I thought also about, you know, the whole thing about, you know, you said, oh, I was in transition, and your meter was like, oh, are you entering? Like, transition generally is not just like a moment, right? And you can be in transition for a long time. And because, as we know, when you spoke before, that your baby was probably asynclitic, was a little bit tilted with the head, wasn't maybe perfectly applied, this would also then explain that it took a bit longer for your body to maybe turn. It sounds like that you said that, with the contractions being maybe 2 minutes apart, and then it's really like 90 seconds long, and maybe like when we have that kind of a bigger, in a sense, a bigger pause, not that 2 minutes sound that big, but in cranking labor, that's big. Like usually maybe it's just 1 minute. And then like 1 minute's your contraction, but you had a bit longer. Sounds like your body really tried to turn your baby, like get like your womb is doing hard work to get your baby down. Which is all good. Like, it's labor. It's just labor. Like, there's
Yeah,
nothing, we know
yeah.
what I mean. And you did perfectly going through that just the way you did. Like, there is no right and wrong about how long something takes, your own journey. As you also kind of said, you had this internal battle. I mean, I love all these beautiful nuggets that you're sharing, because I think a lot of times when we picture, and I say we as just women, we picture like, what is, you know, the perfect natural dream birth, whatever. Then we have, oh, it should be this long this and this long that, and, you know, the stages here and there, and flow like this, and this kind of pattern. And of course,
No.
no, labor and birth does its own thing. And it so is dependent on the baby you're carrying, what they want to show you, of course, with their birth imprint, what you're carrying, you know, what you need to go through.
Yeah.
And I love all the beautiful things about your, you know, your mom, your grandmother, coming through in your labor, your own internal battles. I mean, it's just such a beautiful storytelling about what actually truly birth is. It's so layered if you're open to that and see that. And then you shared about, you know, still feeling blue, or having that postpartum depression feeling at around 2 months. And honestly, I just feel like in the modern times we live in, you know, I think there's so much more women that is being reported, because I don't think you probably didn't report to someone that you were feeling blue. Most women don't. I think it's just you accept that this is what it is, and also you internalize that something's wrong with me, and you internalize, you know, then oh, that's shameful and that's the lowest vibration, right? To kind of be with and hold so you don't tell people. But actually, I think it's quite common because we are living in a culture that doesn't support value on our mothers at all. And also us within ourselves, we don't do that because we have been imprinted on that. That is just our culture. So we internalize that. And I love that you're saying, well, instead of bitching about it, because of course we can do that to the world's end, because this is just the fucked up world we live in, to be honest. We can do the best we can. Like you said, we can try to reach out and find our own mama friends village. And that might be really hard. And it might be like trial and error. And you try and you try and try, and it doesn't work because everyone's in survival mode and it's so hard. But that's the only way through, right? Is that we change the culture without our little friend group, or we're trying to cultivate it in our community the best we can to the extent that we have the energy to. And I also honor for everyone listening who goes like, I've tried and it's so bloody hard and everyone's in survival mode and I'm maybe have one friend, but I've been trying for years. And the only thing I can say is like, keep going. And it's not you. I think that's also really important to hear, that it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just everyone, especially in that time, in the season of having little kids, are all in survival mode. And it's hard to be a village with everyone in survival mode. We need the flourishing, nourishing, nurtured magas and crones who can step in, right? The older wise women. But they are in a generation, most of them, right? That want to be younger. They want to be like, now I don't have kids. I don't have, I'm just gonna see the grandkids when I want. And like they're doing their life because that's what the culture has told them, like be, free now. And so, yeah, we are in a strange time where mothers are not at all supported by state, community, or even family a lot of the times, truly what a need. So I want to really just honor that and say that, because I think we don't say that enough, and women need to hear it. It's not you, it's our culture. And I see you if you're feeling blue.
Yeah, that's lovely. It is, yeah, it isn't supported. You are right. And we just have to do our best to be different, and try our best. I definitely had, I've got a lot of mum acquaintances, but it took me a while, maybe a good year, to find my core tribe. It takes time.
Yeah, because it also needs to be, you have to find those women that also see the value, and even though they're exhausted, turn back to you, right? And that's where, if someone's listening now who feels like they're struggling with this, to get these deeper relationships. Why I'm saying it's not you, it's like keep on trying, because you'll find someone. You'll find a few that will go like, actually, I'm gonna invest, even though I'm so tired, I'm gonna invest back. Because it takes work to create relationships.
Yeah.
You have to put in the work. And when you're depleted in the postpartum, which again, with our nutrition, with our family lives, with our culture, we are as women, not just mothers, as women, as well. So yeah, honoring that, honoring this conversation that needs to happen much more, this honest conversation. Yeah. But I love your redemption birth story. Thank you for sharing that. And if you had a first-time mama in front of you right now who's about to have her first baby and she really wants to have a natural and empowering birth experience, what advice and pearls of wisdoms would you give to her?
I think I've been thinking about this all week, but I think the biggest thing that comes to me is to just follow your intuition. And I know that sounds really cliche, but it's so important, because you only get to birth once, that baby once, and you can't do a repeat. And I genuinely believe birth is the most transformational experience, like the utter apex of what we can do as a woman, up there, and if we approach it with reverence and we really lean into what we feel is right, that's going to just be the foundation for who we are as a mother, because all of the mothering that follows is intuition. When you start getting into your head about this, that, what they're doing, what he's doing, what she's doing, how they parent, what they feed their kids, you will literally just always feel like you're not doing it right. And actually, you're the one who has to close your eyes at night and be at peace with the choices you make. So whatever that is, whether it's a free birth or whether it's, you want an elective section, maybe that's your path. It's not. It's about the things that you decide that sit right for you. But birth, it deserves that reference, and it can be the best transformation ever when you, really own it as your own, and find the wise women that can support you to do that, because they're out there. So yeah, I think that would be what I'd tell them.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your birthing wisdom with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Anna.
Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as The Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.